was, in a nutshell, folks, modern monetary theory. I'm now going to turn to Sue Peters to ask her to give us the perspective from the American Monetary Institute. And Sue, you've got 10 minutes.
Let me turn my timer on. Okay. Hello, David, Walt, Warren, and the audience. I am really glad to be here and to add some understanding of our money system. I'm a member of the Green Party, a member of the American Monetary Institute, and I am also a member of a group of Greens that have created the website greensformonetaryreform.org. We created this website to educate Greens and others about a wonderful monetary reform plank in our Green Party U.S. platform called Greening the Dollar. Before I explain how greening the dollar came to be, let me say a few words about the need for monetary reform. The nature of money and the money system excuse me, is not taught in our schools or discussed in our media. This confusion of what money is and from where money comes does a disservice to all of us because our current monetary system is the root cause of major injustices in our society, such as siphoning our wealth to the 1% while poverty greets more and more of our people. Whoever creates a nation's money has great power to do good, such as funding single-payer health care, or great power to do bad, such as funding corporations that privatize our public services. In sum, the privilege to create a nation's money bestows great wealth and political power. To understand the effects of the monetary system, one needs to look at history. It is only over time that these effects can be seen. Our story, the story of American money, begins in England in 1694. At that time, William III was on the British throne. He had come from Holland, and he wanted to fight a war to protect his ancestral country, but there wasn't enough money. How was he going to get enough money for his war? Well, at this point, some very influential people entered a bill into Parliament, which included a charter for a private corporation called a bank. This bank to be called the Bank of England. According to the charter, the bank would loan gold and silver worth £1.2 million to the king at 8% interest. But in addition, and this was the hidden surprise, the bank was to receive the privilege to print its own private banknotes, another £1.2 million worth, and loan these banknotes out at interest, not to the king, but to the public. The private banknotes were to circulate as money and be accepted for government payments. Well, the bill passed. The king got his war. The nation got the beginning of a permanent national debt, and the bankers got the privilege to create private bank money and loan it at interest to the public. And of course, the first banknotes were taken into Parliament to bribe the politicians. Because you see, Parliament was the only institution that could change the law and take away the bank's privilege to create their money. Slowly over time, the private banks created more and more of the nation's money, first as banknotes, then as accounting entries in checking accounts, all as loans to the public with interest. Slowly over time, the debts of the government and citizens grew and grew. Slowly, the ability of the government to meet the needs of the people was less and less. And slowly, the wealth of the country concentrated in the banks and the powerful corporations they funded. The American colonies, however, rejected this system of private bank money. They refused to charter private banks. All 13 colonies issued sovereign public money direct from their colonial legislatures. The colonies prospered as their public money circulated, encouraging trade, crafts, and farming. But Parliament, under the control of the powerful Bank of England, outlawed the colonial sovereign public money, first in 1751, and then the harshest law in 1763. Benjamin Franklin claimed that within 1 year, the colonies were filled with unemployment and beggars just like in England. The result was our Revolutionary War. We won that war. Our Constitution, under Article 1, Section 8, gave Congress the power to create our money. However, a political war continued throughout the 1800s. The most important national issue was the money question, public versus private creation of the money supply. But in 1913, the Federal Reserve Law was passed. This law created 12 Federal Reserve banks, again with a misleading name, making them appear to be part of the government. But every single share of these 12 corporations is owned by their private member banks with names like Citibank and JP Morgan Chase. And again, this law had a hidden surprise. The privilege and responsibility for creating our nation's money was handed over by Congress to these same member commercial banks and their private bank money. Well, what has been the result for our nation? Funding of 2 world wars and today's perpetual wars. A permanent national debt now close to $20 trillion. Numerous financial crises. The most extreme, the Great Depression, and then the collapse of 2008, where 10 million families lost their homes. Massive inequality and poverty, where the average U.S. household owes more than $16,000 to credit card companies. And the funding of multinational corporations to create cheap products through cheap labor, eliminating American jobs and reducing our living standards. And remember, the bankers have taken their bank money into the halls of Congress and bought off our politicians. But there is most definitely a solution for our nation, which overnight converts the bank money to sovereign public money. In this solution, everybody's money is maintained safe and secure, and all debts are payable. Please look at our website, Greens for Monetary Reform, which explains the Green Party monetary reform plank. This plank was based on the work of Stephen Zarlanga and the American Monetary Institute. In 2008, Missouri Greens made it part of the party's platform with their help. The reform went through 3 years of legal review in Congress and emerged as the NEED Act and the National Emergency Employment Defense Act. Dennis Kucinich courageously introduced this bill to Congress in 2010 and 2011. It is the first plank of the Green Party platform to be made into an actual bill in the U.S. Congress. The website will explain the problem of private bank money, the solution of sovereign public money, and the elegant transition from private to public system. The History tab offers you learning materials for Stephen Zarlanga's book, The Lost Science of Money, which was foundational for both the Green Party, Greening the Dollar plank, and the NEED Act. Let me conclude with describing Greening the Dollar and its 3 parts, and all 3 parts have to be implemented at the same time to keep the power of the creation of money in the public hands. Number 1, the government buys all the shares in the 12 reserve banks, putting them in the U.S. Treasury. Number 2, private commercial banks are no longer allowed to create money. This is accomplished by a change in federal accounting rules. And number 3, Congress creates our sovereign money, spends it for our public needs, and in the process creates tens of millions of good jobs. I end with a quote from one of the students from the Law Science of Money class. This is what he said. What we use as money is created by private commercial banks whenever they make a loan and charge interest. This is capitalism's most essential feature and completely missing from the study and definition of capitalism. Thank you all very much.
So, Sue, I want to make sure, just as I did with Warren, am I understanding, according to the American Monetary Institute as well as the Greens at Greening the Dollar, you're calling to nationalize the Federal Reserve, and is that basically right, or at least
Yes.
one part of it, right? And
Yes.
then, so this notion of, and I want to make sure you're saying end bank creation of money in its entirety. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And then the third plank, would you say that again, just in your own words, rather than just read it off?
Oh, the national government issues, the Congress will issue all the new money, all of sovereign money, it's money without debt, without interest. It's an asset to our country and our nation, and it spends it into the economy.
Okay. So thanks. I know that we're going to get into